And share screen. So this is my portfolio. It's not very nice. I think it's very, but anyway, this was the one with the admin and user button, and that we could add a project, and then we could see here a project, and then we had like this featured section. So let's talk a bit about ReactRouter and what is front-end routing, basically, and what is the difference from the traditional back-end routing. We will see what is a single-page application. We have mentioned this before, but also what is the peculiarity of a single-page application regarding routing. What does the ReactRouter solve? So which one is the problem that we have with a single-page application and we want to solve it? How do we define routes in the front end in React and navigate between routes either declaratively, so that I have a menu and I click, so I navigate between one and the other, or programmatically. And by programmatically, we mean that I automatically redirect and load another page. We have done this also with this app. Remember that we have done that when a project was entered, automatically we were redirecting the user to this view. So this is the navigate programmatically, because you program the navigation. It's not something that you expect the user to do. And how to handle routes with dynamic parameters, like an ID or a name or something. Same as we have seen, there are many similarities with what we have seen with setting up routes and APIs on the backend, just that this can be done on the front end. So these kind of lectures like this one and the ones that will be coming, the flash lectures, are things that are like good to have, nice to have, and you can put them in use in your applications, but it's not really necessary that you do. So maybe you want to give it a try and you want to include it, and it's always nice to know, but if you want to skip it, your app could work as we did until now with other ways as well. But this is the official way of doing these menus and navigation between pages, etc. Okay, so what is a single page application? It's an application where from the beginning, we load everything, all the pages, not only the index page, but all the pages, the admin page, the user page, all the images, everything. We load this from the beginning from the server. And then when we want to click and go from one to the other, sections, they are rewritten, but the content is already loaded from the server. So we load all normally of the app. And once the app is loaded, our only interaction with the server afterwards is done with the fetch, because we want to get some new data or some concrete information of a user, but we don't ask the server for new pages anymore, because the pages have been already loaded. And that's why also these single page applications, sometimes they take a bit of more time to load at the very beginning than a traditional simple HTML page. But then everything is loaded, and so the rest of the interactions, they are very fast. So when you move from one to the other, or either is, if you load the whole new view, like whole new page, or a part of the page, all this loading is done quite quickly. And this is the benefit of using a single page application. And so there is the server that we serve for API, as an API server for web, mobile, and other platforms. And if we compare it with a normal page, so I have here an example. This is a page some friends have done for this tournament. And it's a normal, old-fashioned, simple HTML pages. that are hosted in a server. And so this one is the index one. And if you click this one, you get a new one. And you can see the difference because up here on the URL, you see that there is a new HTML loaded. So if I go here, I see that there is something else loaded, and it takes a bit of a time because every time I ask the page from the server. And so when I want to load all these pages with its icons and everything, I make a request, HTTP request to the server, same as the HTTP request we were doing for fetch, but instead of fetching some data, we are fetching the whole HTML and the images and everything that this is needing. So there are two differences between what happens here and what is happening in our application. So one is the URL. You see here we have this URL localhost. We are now in admin view, but even if I change to user view, nothing changes here. Or even if I click and there is some other interaction, some section, nothing changes here. Okay, and so the user doesn't have really an indication on which page it is. And also another drawback is that I cannot directly send a link to just this page. So if I want to send a link to a part of the page to someone saying, hey, check this, I don't know, this information here. So I cannot send just directly the link to the user view. If I copy this link and I send it to someone and the user opens this, it will open always the first page that I have defined, and in this case is the admin view. So the different pages are not identified by different links. Okay, and this is not very useful when we want to make like linking, direct linking, and also for search engines like Google, sometimes this creates issues because Google wants to be able to not categorize, so to keep in its track the different pages with their URLs. So this is one difference, that the URL doesn't change because there isn't a new page loaded, and also that the back button is not working in our single page application. So here, since the URL is not changing, there is also not a back button, okay, or a forward button. So we lose the history of the user interaction, what it went from one to the other. And of course, this one is very simple now, just 2 pages, but if you have a normal page with a menu and many pages that you go from one to the other, then you may want the user to be able to go back, as we can go back here, and there are all the steps that we did from the server, they are kept. So we have this difference from the multi-page, the normal multi-page applications. The client does a request to the server for an HTML and the server responds. And then if there is some form or some other page that we want to load, then again, we send this to the server and the server responds with the whole HTML. So the server on the backend doesn't only have to be an API server as we have used it so far. So it doesn't only have to respond just pure data in JSON format, it can also respond pages. And this was happening until now when we do the rest.send, you know, in the APIs that we define on the server, on the routes, we were doing rest.send and then we were sending back some data. We could also do rest.send index.html and rest.send collaborators HTML. So we could be sending every time in every response a whole HTML constructed and filled on the backend. With the SPA, the single page applications, we do an initial request, we get all the HTML, and then every time we want to fill some gap or to ask some new data, we do some fetch, and then we just work with the API part of the server. So we just get back only the data, and we do the filling and the putting things together on the front end. And this is good because it doesn't interrupt the UX and the going from one side to the other, but it has these two issues that we discussed. So here, if I go from home to about, you can see it reflected, and it is reflected on the address bar, and also the back buttons are working, as I was saying. And if not, we don't have a unique URL for each one of our pages. So this is what we had for the portfolio, and for navigating from one to the other, we were using this isAdmin variable, if you remember. So we had this isAdmin to set to false, and when we were clicking on one, we were changing it to true, and if it was true, it was showing one thing, and if it was false, it was showing the other thing. What are the disadvantages to this approach? First of all, that this works if we have like 2 pages, but if you have 15, then what will you do? Like a ternary operator or a very complex if-else case that if page is 1, then show this. If page is 2, show the other. So this is okay with a true-false with a couple of pages, but if you have to do some kind of navigation with many more, this is not easy to work. And then we have the other disadvantage that we cannot use and pass a very unique URL to other users. So it doesn't scale well if we have many pages to create, and this ternary operator will not scale very well. The browser history isn't updated, so the browser previous next buttons won't work, and we cannot bookmark a concrete page, a concrete view. Yes, is it understood so far? So for this, we have ReactRouter, which is another package from React. There are some React components that we can use, and it let us emulate this navigation within our single page application, captures the mouse click, organizes our routes, and updates the browser history so the previous and next button can work, and we can have concrete URLs to bookmark. So the concept is similar to what we had on the backend, on express routes. We define that when we receive a request to a concrete URL, we show a concrete component or a concrete view. So on the backend, we had that when I receive a request at the /about, then maybe I was sending back this message or this JSON or this part of the database. Same way works on the front end. Now on the front end, if I receive a request for a route, for a front-end route, so for a view, let's say, that will be /about or /admin/user, this is no longer an API. So now it doesn't mean that here someone is requesting user data, it's requesting the user view, so the whole page. The name here, we use the same name, but it's not that it's the same thing. It's just to see the equivalence between how we write it on the Express and how we write it on ReactRouter. So in the ReactRouter, we define routes for each one of our views. And so we say that when someone or somewhere we ask about the /admin or /user, then this is the view that we will render. And so we create these URLs that we will then be able to see also on the browser, and they will be connected to some concrete components and views. So normally we group all of these routes in something that is called routes. This is another one of the components of the ReactRouter. So we have like this routes group, and then inside for each route, we have a different line. So one route for the home. So if it's just localhost 3000 with nothing else, just the very root path, let's say, then for this, we get the home view. If the route is for the /about, then I will load the about view. And if nothing is matched, so for anything else, so we have this asterisk, normally we put this at the end. Maybe we have one page, this is typical 404, that you did not find the page that the user was searching for. Only one route will be matched, and the best match will be matched, not the first one. Because at the past, as it was working, the ReactRouter, so in some of the early versions, you needed to specify the order, because then maybe since these two start from the same thing, it will get the first one that it will find matching. So it will start matching and then find the slash and then will give you the first route. But now it's working, it's more intelligent, it's working in a more clever way. And so it will just do the best match. And if you ask for the about, you will get this one. So we define our routes, we group them like this. And then for going from one page to the other, so for creating navigation menus, or for having a link somewhere in your page, like saying, go to the contact page. You can contact us here, and you want to have a link to one of your views. For this, we use this link component, the link React component, which also, it's the equivalent to what it would be an anchor element when you would create a link. So we say that we create a link to this route, and we put the link text, or maybe we can add in here, we can have an image, or we can have a list item, or whatever. So it's a normal anchor. We can use it as we would use an anchor element. And it specifies that when I click here, get me to this route. And this route I have already specified before that we load this view. Okay, so at the beginning, this we define it only one time at the beginning and the app.js. And then whenever we use the links, we know that the slash about is equivalent to that page, that view. And we also have navigation link, another special component, which is a special kind of link. So it is similar, very similar to link, and the way to write it is the same. It's just we use navlink instead of link, and the only difference is that the navlink knows whether or not is active. So you remember also on the menu that we wanted to somehow show the user if we are on the admin or if we are on the user view. Or normally when we have some kind of navigation menu and there are many pages, and maybe the one that you are currently on, it's like more intense, bolder or red, or some way to indicate that this link is active. So this comes with an active class that you can then define on how you want to style it, and so that you show which link is the active one. And this is the normal that we use when we create navigation menus. So what we do is that on our first component, the app.js, we create these routes and we link all the rest of the views that we would like to link. And we also have to include all of this part needs to be within another component that it's a browser router, it's called. So it actually should be either here or on the index.js. We will see it in the VS Code better. And so then we can also use sub routes. So we can have the slash cats, and then we can also have, similar to what we had on the backend, slash cats with some ID. This is the same structure we use with a semicolon. So we can specify that this concrete route, for this, we are going to load this view. Can be a whole page or can be a part of the page. But when someone requests this URL, then you load this component, this part. And we write it the same way as we were writing it on the backend with the dot and the ID. And then when we want to use this ID inside, for example, in the cat detail view, we extract this ID not as a prop, because it's not a prop. We did not pass this ID here. cat detail view, ID, and this thing, as we do normally in React props. This is passed as part of the URL, as part of the path. And so we extract it by using this hook that is called use params that grabs all the parameters. Same as on the front, on the backend, we use the rec.params.id to get the ID and use it for anything we like to search for some data. Then also here we have these use params and we extract the different things that are parameters of the URL.
Quick question.
Yes.
So with our portfolio, we have the user view and the admin view. So in this example, if we said like that is in the user view and then we had our pictures with the ID. So we would put this in the user view, this function that breaks down which parameter that we're using. Is that correct?
Yes, you can use it inside the user view and then the feature section. So this part, the feature section, that it was depending on which ID you click, you can make that when I click on a picture, then this loads by assigning this path to this click. So this image is linked to this /user/ID, and you pass the ID to this, and then it loads the feature section in this way. And we will actually see this in the example that we will do now. And another one of the hooks that come together with the React router is the use navigate. This we use it when we want to do some kind of redirection to redirect from one view to another the user. This is what is called the programmatic navigation. So same as we were doing, as I was saying before, on the admin view, that when we fill the form, automatically we redirected the user to the user view. Then here as well, maybe when we add the cat, after we set the cats and everything, then we want to navigate the user to some other view. And so in this case, we use this. First, we load navigate. So we say that navigate, this name, we can put whatever we want. Is something that it means that it will be something, a parameter that is going to use the use navigate, but normally we call it navigate. So navigate equals use navigate, we use this hook, and then navigate, we use it like this, we set to which path we want to redirect the user. Okay, so there is in the React router, there is a documentation. There are a lot of things here. It's quite good. The only problem is that they changed very recently. So they are now in version 6.8. The examples that we had was with 6.4, which was a major update also in the last 2 years. But now this recent change to 6.8 was done, I think, in the last 2 months or something. And so if you try to follow the tutorial, which you can, because I mean, if you understand the concept with the examples that we will do today, you can also follow the tutorial, but then you may see some differences in the syntax that they use, just so that you have in mind. But they also have a lot of examples here on their GitHub. So you could also go and check the basic, for example, that is a simple React app, and it has just one component, the main, they call it main, it's what we had as index.js, and it's TSX because it's using TypeScript, but you will see inside that it's not different actually. So it's the same structure that we had in our index.js, and it shows the router in action. And then on the app, there is this part that are the routes, and they define the different routes. So you can, let's do first an example, and then if you want to see some more examples and try a bit on your own, then you can go here to the documentation and follow the documentation and follow the examples. Okay, so for starting and loading and be able to use all these different components from ReactRouter, we need to install it. So the first thing that we will do is that we are going to open our portfolio. So this is the portfolio app that I was showing you. Let me clean some of these things. This I don't need. And let me just put this here. And this I don't need. So remember a bit how our portfolio was done. This is the final version of the portfolio. We had some navigation part with these two buttons, admin and user. The admin was the form and the user is where we showed the different items and also a featured section. And we had this is admin to navigate from one to the other by checking if this is true or false. And then we had just these two components, the admin view with the form and the user view with these two sections, the grid of projects and the featured. Okay, so how would you start? First, we need to install a router. So npm install ReactRouter DOM. I'm using Node 16 if you want, just in case, to downgrade to Node 16 so that you don't get any issues. If you want to try to do it at the same time. So we load this. Okay. And so in order to start using it, we need to go to our, first we go to the index.js. So this we do just one time and we wrap all the app component because the app is our root. So that means that all the components actually will be wrapped around something that is called browser router. One of the components is called browser router and we import browser router from ReactRouter DOM, which is the package that we just installed. So this browser router we use to wrap our app around the browser router. So this is the only difference on the index.js. It means that the app and consequently all the components that are included in the app, because app loads all the rest, will be using the browser router. This is because if you also check in the documentation, there are different types of routers defined on this package. So the browser router is the most simple and the one that we will be using, but there are others as well. I think ReactRouter. Here, picking a router. So we have the browser router, but there is also a hash router and a memory router. And there is also, I think, this native router. And so there are different types of router. And we don't have to bother now to understand the differences between all, etc. The browser router is the one that we will be using. And it's the simpler one. And so the first step is to do this, to load browser router and wrap a wrap component around this browser router component. Or the opposite, wrap the browser router around our wrap component. Okay, so now we can go to our app and import the things that we will be using for routing. So we need to import routes with an S. We have two things, routes, and link. From ReactRouter DOM. Routes, route, and link. So once we have this loaded, let's try use this. We will replace this ternary operator that we had here with isAdmin, load one thing, and if not, load the other thing, with the routes and route format. So first we will load the routes with the plural. This is the one that will enclose all the different smaller routes. So routes is the one that goes as the enclosing component, and then inside we will create a route for each one of our views. And the route will define the path and the element that we will be loading. So this is the standard format. Each route has a path where we will specify with which path we define each view and which view we're going to load for each one. I will write two for now. So one will be for the admin, and the admin, let's say, is our route path. We don't need to specify anything else because this is what I want to load whenever the user types localhost 3000. So this will be like my index page. And then that means that here I want to load the admin view. So I just copy all these components and I put it in here on the element part. And then the other route, I define, for example, that it is user, and I copy this component, the user component, just as it is with all its props, etc. And I pass it in here, all the elements. And now I can get rid of this. And this will be my two routes, one for the index when we load the page and one for the user. Okay, this defines the routes. Let me remove some other things. For example, now I'm not going to use this handle change view, so I'm not going to be setting true, false, the admin. So this I can remove. I can remove this variable where it was storing the true or false that I was using for navigation. And I can also remove here from the buttons the on click that was changing the true or false again to load one thing or the other. So now this is not going to work like this. We will use the other component, the link as well here. We will modify this now in a moment. Okay, and also here there is this set is admin. I'm going to put this in comment, and now I'm not going to use it like this. I will programmatically navigate, send the user to the user view whenever a new project is added with this other navigate hook. We will do this last. So for now we have our routes like this, but we need to specify some links to this route. So if I go here to my log, no, it's not working. VM start. Link is defined but never used. Okay, so now my button is not working because I have not linked it to anything. If I write on the URL user, I should be able to see the user view. But right now these buttons are not linked because I don't use any anchor or link or anything. And this is what I'm going to do now, so that they are clickable and one is linked to the path to the slash and the other one is linked to the path / user. So I want this first button to be linked to the admin path and the other to the user path. So I'm going to use the link component and I'm going to place the link around the button. So the button, when I click the link, when I click the button, it's like clicking the link. And the link syntax is that I just say link to and specify to which path this is going to. So let me see the slides. we have it. The link, sorry, it is too, because I wanted to see if it is, okay, it is with string directly. Yes, you don't need to put the curly braces. So instead of the curly braces is the string. And so I specify, it's actually the same thing as we do here on the path, I do here on the link. So this first is linked to this route. So the admin is linked to this route. And the second one, I'm going to use link again and wrap this button around the link, or the link around the button, and specify that this will be calling the user path. So now when I load, and if I click, let me see. This is the function never used. Did I save this? Maybe start, because I think it's stuck. Okay. Okay, now it's working. It was, yes, it was kind of stuck. So now my buttons are like before, but when I click on one or the other, I load one thing, the slash path, or the other path. So in this way. And in fact, this being a navigation, we could use, instead of the link, we could use the nav link. And so if I use it now, you will not see much difference, because then you need to also change. So instead of the nav link, the link, I can load and use the nav link, which is the one that we use when we want to make some difference to see which one is active, because right now I don't see any active. But for this, you need to go to the CSS and define the active class. Let me see. Now I don't really. There is the active color red. But yes, this I have not tried now for this example, and can be a bit of an issue because we also have the bootstrap classes and they go one with the other. I'll check how this works with the nav link. So to make it look, if you don't specify anything, it will work just as a normal link. So the only difference is that it's supposed to have a special class that when you define in your CSS this class, you define the characteristics, the colors or the font, etc. And then it will use this class automatically to show which link is active of the two, because right now we cannot see if this or this link is active. But at the same time, these are now buttons, they are not really a simple link. And so the CSS here is going to be a bit more complex. So anyway, we have these two routes and we go from one to the other. We also wanted to send directly the user, when it was clicking, filling the form, send it directly to the other page. So for this, instead of doing it as before, that we were simply changing our variable from true to false, we will use the use navigate hook. And so here at the beginning of our page, let's say start the hook or initialize it or use it. And then I'm using this navigate variable and say to which path I'm going to redirect the user. So then that means that when this function is called, when the form is going to call the handle add project, the project will be added, and then will automatically redirect to the user path. So let's try it. And I automatically get redirected here. And this works as it was before. I did not change anything here. For now, the basic navigation, we have it. If we add some other project, we are redirected. We have here, the rest is working fine. And the good thing is that we have this user now, and that we also have the back button working, back and forward button working. So it looks much better because it looks more like a normal multi-page application, although it still is a single page application. Questions on this? Have you tried it? Did you have any issues? I don't know if you're trying it at the same time or you will try it later. So then the other thing that we could specify, like a step further, is to have some nested route, as it's called, so that then when I click on this, then this part here, it's actually a view that it is user/1, let's say. So right now user/1 doesn't represent anything, but so that this part, the feature section, is like a sub part of the user view with an ID specified. So when I click on one of the images, it means that I'm calling another view with a concrete ID. So how do I do that? First of all, let me load here a couple of projects so that I don't have to write them all the time. Let me check the URL. Because since now we are not using the database for this, and it's just this projects array. Every time I reload the page, I'm losing them. Why do I only see one? 22. Let's see, Maria. It's one object. No. Okay, it should be two objects. Okay. So I see both of them. So let's say that I want to have this also opportunity to have the slash with some ID. So this route, I can either specify as a different route and have like the user ID, and then maybe this one loads a user detail view with, I don't know, something that you want to pass as a prop. So we will need to create this, and this would be a whole new page with its own URL and loading a new component. Or I could have, if I want this to be a part of the previous one, so as a section, I could have this route nested inside the other route so that it's part of the other route. So both things can work. Let's see. Let's nest it. It's better because since they both start with the user, it's better that they are nested. So if we want to nest it, we simply put it in here, like in between the starting and the closing part of the route. So this route includes this other route in it. But in this case, then we don't need to put this user part. This is, we understand that this is already like, if it's nested, it will be starting with this, and then it is going to continue with this, with the ID, so that it's a sub route of the user. But of course, this user detail component, I need to create it right now that it doesn't exist, and that's why I get an error. Right now, everything was inside the user view, but let's say I want to extract the user feature, the featured section, and have a smaller user detail component for that. So I'm going to create this user detail component. And in fact, I'm going to copy, let me just copy everything and I will delete what I don't need. Because I just want to leave the featured section in this component. Okay, and this is called user detail. And from the user view, I'm going to remove the featured part. And I'll show you how we replace these parts here. So here I should add something. So here, add load the user detail. So this is where we had our featured section, and now instead we want to load this other smaller component. In this case, we're not going to load it as we would, because if normally we wanted to simply load a component, we will say like user detail and we will load it here. Now we're not going to do it like this because we want to go to this component with a click. So instead, what we will do is we will use something else from the React router that is called Outlook. So here I'm going to write outlet, sorry, outlet. And outlet means that here you load some of the nested routes. So of the routes that you have defined on the app, the one that is nested, you will load here the nested one. The component that you have already defined on the app that it's nested inside the other one. So we use this outlet. In order to use it, we have to load it. So we need already created this. So import outlet from ReactRouter DOM. So this one is another one of the ReactRouter DOM components. User detail, I don't need it. So it's loaded before. And so what I want to do is now that for going to this outlet, so for loading this part, I'm not going to do the on-click. Before I was doing the on-click. So the image, when I was clicking it, it was loading this. This is perfectly fine. This is also work. So you don't really need to use a route for this subsection. So if you want to do it with an on-click, then you can also do it with an on-click. But let's say, because now we want to see also this, how the outlet works and how these pages with /ID work. So we would replace this on-click from the image to a link. So it's like putting an anchor. If we wanted to make the image linkable to a page, in any other case, we would say we have an anchor and then we have an image. And then when we click the image, we go to that page. So our anchor, in our case, in React, is the link. Link to, and here I have to specify to which path I'm linking it. And my path is the user with a concrete ID, with this ID, the project ID. Okay, so in order to write this, I need to put it in a backtick format because I need to replace the ID part with this concrete ID. What am I missing link to. Okay, in this case, I need to put it in between brackets because this backtick format is a JavaScript thing, and if not, it will not understand it. So here we have some JavaScript information inside, and so it needs to be in these brackets, the string, so that it translates it to a normal string. Okay, so what I'm doing is the images that I had before, I'm linking its image to this sub page, the user with the concrete ID. I'm passing the project ID. And so that I want to load this item there with this ID. And I need to also load link in order to be able to use it. Okay, where do I get user detail is not defined. Okay, I have to load user detail here. Right. And so on the user detail part, I need to be able to extract the ID from the URL. So now someone has sent a link to me that includes the ID that I have to use in order to be able to show a project. And for extracting an ID, for extracting any parameter from the URL, we use the hook that is called useParams. And the useParams has all the parameters that we pass. So like that, and I have to import it. It already added it for me when I wrote it, but you import useParams from ReactRouter DOM. And then you extract from these parameters the ID, which is the one that will be coming from the URL. And so now I need to use this ID to fetch some data. In the normal situation, when I will be having a database, what I would do is actually use the use effect. And in here, I would be doing that whenever I load this page, I'm doing some fetch for a user with a concrete ID from our server so that I get the data for this. So I will have a get somewhere on the backend, an API, a get API that will get the concrete details of this user with this ID. So this is what I would normally do if I had a database. So in fact, I would have to write it also like this in the backtick format. So I get the ID and I load it. And then when I got the response from the fetch, I would set the this featured item that I want to be showing in this place to this data that I would be getting back from the fetch. So from this, I will be getting back some data, and then I would set the feature to data, so that I then can use featured here and show this part of the section. Right now, I don't have a database. I just have this array. That's why I'm also passing the array here to emulate this. So I'm getting the whole array on the user detail. And instead, what I will do is to get the user from the array, find and in fact, this ID, it's numeric, but the ID that comes from the parameters, it's a string, so I need to translate it to a number. And then use this to set feature to this user. I think I'm missing this one here. Okay, let's see if this will work. I have some issue here. It just works one time. So if I write it like this, the use effect like this, it will just work at one time. I want it to work every time I get a new ID. So every time the ID changes, and that's why I'm going to write the ID in here in the dependencies array. We have not used this much, but basically what this dependencies array says is that you run again this part of the code when this variable changes. So since this is depending on the ID, then I will rerun the fetch every time I get a new ID, a request for a new ID. So like this, I have everything working. I go to user. If I click, I see that the URL also updates. It says user2, which is this one, or user1. And I show this smaller part of the section like this by using the outlet. So you don't have to, of course, remember everything. You can review it a bit, study it. It's not really that hard. It's like using these links, but you don't have to also overcomplicate things for start. It's good that you use it at least for your navigation menu, so that you practice it a bit, that you create the paths, and that at least your main views work with some menu that uses these URLs. And also, if you want to redirect from one to the other somewhere, because maybe here you wanted to write something, click to go back to the form and say you want to navigate to go back to the form, then use this navigate, practice this a bit. But this nested route, for now, you could also skip it and just use the on click as we had it before. So this is not really necessary. Okay. Questions? How does it look? Better, worse, complicating? So this is very common. And in fact, the app, many times the app just has the routes. So there is no code. It just has maybe a navigation part and the routes. And the navigation is always loading. So what this does is that this navigation loads for everything. And then you have the routes that you will load one or the other according to what you click. And so app.js normally doesn't have much more. I don't know, in the basic example that they had on the ReactRouter slides. So here you see they don't even have different components and they have everything in the app. But again, they have the slash path and then the other routes are nested in this. So there is the about, there is the dashboard, and there is one for the nomads. This is also a good practice that you create a special view, a special component with a 404 error. So not found, page not found, and you have a special page for that. And you also add this route for when nothing else is found. Because right now in my app, if I try to write something like instead of user cuts, then I don't get any information, nothing is found, but also I don't get any information. It's good that it loads something that at least says that this is not found. I will pass you this example if you like. I think it's good that we already have the structure from before so that we see how we modify it instead of starting from scratch, and you can apply to your own portfolios. Okay, so I'm going to stop this part here. If you have any questions on this, and if not, we will take a small break. Let me see, I'm recording.